Hello and welcome to the Soul Sync podcast. I'm Jason Paul. It's lovely to have you here with me. I'm really excited to share this episode with you. I actually recorded this, it must have been about 14 months ago. And the first time I came across this guest was actually on the Gaia Network because she's being interviewed by George Noory. Now, Lisa Barnett is her name, and she is the author of Your Soul Has a Plan. As I said, I first came across her on the Gaia Network. She did a really interesting 1-hour documentary with George Noory, where she spoke all about the Akashic Records. Now, if you've never heard about the Akashic Records before, you're in for a treat with this episode because we're going to do a really deep dive. So today we're going to discuss all about your soul's plan. When you come down here onto the earth plan, you've already signed up to your life journey, which is why you hear people talk about kind of their soul plans, their soul, all these sorts of connected things. And we're going to talk about that in deep detail because it's fascinating, because we actually went into the chamber where the Akashic Records are. Well, Lisa went there and actually found out loads of my past lives, and some of them were so interesting. And the craziest thing about it was I actually kind of knew that already because it just felt right. So you're going to learn a lot on this one. Lisa's book's excellent. I've also read that too, which is how I came across her. So I encourage you to sit back, take a breath, and kind of use this time to remember that if there feels a disalignment in your life at the moment, which could be from your soul plan, hopefully this episode will help you. So, Lisa, firstly, a massive warm welcome onto the Soul Sync podcast.
Thank you. I am just thrilled to be here with you and everyone.
I'm thrilled to have you. Now, I have to say, I have to tell the listeners, first of all, how I first came across you. I was watching the Gaia Network, and it's a network I find myself sometimes watching late at night. And I came across an episode, the Beyond Belief series with George Noory, and you were the guest on the episode, and the episode was titled Rewriting Soul Contracts. And I was blown away by you, the Akashic Records, and it's something that I found to be so interesting. So I am so excited to have you here today, actually on the Soul Sync podcast. So we are not going to be short of things to talk about. And I will say to the audience from the get-go, Lisa has so kindly offered to read my Akashic Records, which is going to be fascinating. Before we started the episode, Lisa opened me up. You'll describe more about that in a moment. But before we kind of get really into the meat and bones of the Akashic Records, tell us about your story, Lisa.
So my story actually goes all the way back to being a toddler, which is when I had my first crazy epiphany, which was that I was trapped back in a body. And I could literally remember not being in a body, hanging out like in the etheric field with my two best buddies. And and at 3 years old, with not the best language yet, right? Toddlers don't really know how to talk that well. I remember trying to explain something to my mother, and she didn't have any idea what I was trying to tell her. And that kind of triggered that, like, oh my God, she can't understand me. She can't grok this, what I'm trying to say. And I started to tell her I wanted to go back. I wanted to go home. I was like, this is too much work. What am I doing here? So that started my spiritual journey. And as often happens with us on this earth plane, we plan things to trigger ourselves to remember if we don't remember quickly enough. So I did remember at 3. I happened to remember very young. But again, I kind of fell back asleep, in elementary school and being a kid. And I was honestly triggered again at 13 when one of my 2 soul sisters, dearest best friends, was in a coma with a brain tumor. And I thought, I should be able to heal her. I'm a healer. How come I can't heal her? I don't even know how to heal. Oh my God, what is going on here? And so that actually started my studying. She passed, which was so sad and upsetting, of course, but it made me feel like I have to get on this. I came to do something. I need to learn how to heal people. So it's been an interesting and long road. And again, roller coasters, like we did the whole roller coaster thing. You know, I studied all through high school. I studied philosophy at the university. And then my second dear soul sister died in a car accident. So crazy kinds of things. Often I wouldn't say it was all part of my soul plan, although we'll talk about the fact that your soul does have a plan. But they kind of come together in a variety of ways. And instead of her death pushing me to even go more spiritual, because I already was very spiritual and studying, philosophy and whatever the interesting books were out there, Journeys Out of the Body by Robert Monroe and Be Here Now by Baba Ram Dass. I was, back in the 70s, and that sent me down a whole nother rabbit hole. So, we're fascinating souls. There's so much we want to learn and do, and it's rarely a straight road, right? So after I went down that crazy rabbit hole, into the world of, the 70s, I was in California here in San Francisco. And, when I crawled out of that rabbit hole, I thought, oh no, I have totally screwed up my life, right? I could have been a spiritual teacher at probably 21. And here I am at 35 trying to pull myself back together. And I asked the record keepers, I said, did I totally blow it, right? Did I screw up my plan? Did I just go way off course? And of course, because the record keepers are pure source energy of love, they laugh and they say, no, of course not. You wouldn't be who you are now if you hadn't gone down that crazy rabbit hole. You wouldn't have the compassion. You wouldn't have the understanding or the caring or the awareness, right? The consciousness of how life really works. If it had all been easy, that wouldn't have been helpful. So
it's interesting.
Yeah.
So you mentioned your soul sister. How did you know that was a soul sister, or was this something that you knew kind of later on, sort of reflecting back?
Well, yeah, back and forth. So when I was 3, the literal image I had was me and 2 other souls just communicating with no words in this etheric plane. And then in my childhood, I met my first soul sister at like 4. And about a year later, her parents moved across the street. Our parents were best friends and we were best friends. We were like sisters. We did everything together. And then along came one more friend, our third soul sister, who we kind of adopted in. And there was the 3 of us again. And interesting, there we were again, which I didn't relate back to my 3-year-old memory at that point when I was, 10. But so that kind of came through later from the Akashic Records, that these were the same soul sisters that I remembered as a 3-year-old. But what a weird and interesting thought. If you then, back up and look at the 3 of us, 2 of them died before they were 20.
And I was going to ask you, because I want to, one question I want to ask you is about, because you said before we started recording that you was a medium and a healer, then you was contacted in the 90s by the Akashic Record Keepers. But before we go into that, there's going to be people who are listening to this who aren't even sure what the Akashic Records are. So I want to kind of tackle that point firstly, so it gives context, so we don't wait till we get 20 minutes in before we reveal what they are.
Yes, brilliant. Absolutely. So the Akashic Record is the recording of your soul's journey throughout really all time-space continuum. So I like to imagine that from the moment your soul individuates from source, it goes on a huge journey, other dimensions, other worlds, galaxies, the multiverse, we do it all. We really are infinite souls. And then we eventually come to this earth plane, right? And all of that is automatically, energetically recorded in this field that we call the Akasha. And I like to imagine it as a library because, of course, it's a little easier to wrap your brain around a library than some expansive quantum field aspect of source, right? So if you imagine that you have a library filled with thousands and thousands, maybe millions of books, because you're that infinite. And that library has its own set of librarians who I generally refer to as the Akashic Record Keepers. So every single one of you has your own personal library and your own personal set of librarians. And literally, they are waiting to help you out here. They are just waiting around because that's all they do. Your record keepers are keeping your records throughout all time space.
Who are the Akashic Record Keepers? How would you describe them?
Well, again, I mean, they do act as our librarians, but the interesting kind of story the record keepers told me way long time ago, they said, if you imagine when you individuate from source, right, all of a sudden you're a brand new, pure baby soul. And we're born in like a little basket, a little group of, a half a dozen or so about 25 or more souls, a bigger group, not a half a dozen, 2 dozen souls. And so you all come together. This is your soul family, your original soul family. And you say, what do we want to do? Where are we going to go? We have a lot of choices here. And the story, the way the record keepers tell it is they say, if you imagine Source was a high-rise office building in Manhattan, right, in New York City, and you come down and there you are standing on the streets of Manhattan and there's, taxis and buses and people and, everything, bicycles flying by. And, do you want to go jump in a taxi and go to the airport, or should we go discover, what else is here in this world, or what do we do? And so kind of the interesting aspect to me was that they said, my soul family, went for a walk down the street and we stumbled into the big, this big library, realizing at that point that there is a library of everything. You have your own personal library, but there are huge galactic libraries and bigger even than the multiverse libraries. And apparently me and my soul family group went into the library and we stuck around for a while and actually became Akashic Record librarians. And so eventually we went on our way. After, who knows, millions of years, no time, space, right? Said, okay, now I've studied, now I've been the Akashic Record Keeper for many, many, souls. Now I want to go experience it in person. And so, of course, I went on my own journey, and our whole soul family, we went off and went on our journeys. So when the record keepers kind of tapped me on the shoulder. Actually, they yelled at me a whole bunch for about
in the
5
90s. This wasn't it?
This is, they started yelling at me. So it was kind of a big booming voice. I had no idea who it was. At that point, I was a psychic. I was an energy healer, right? And then I'd get this huge information. I'd be like, oh, wow, that was amazing. It was all this past life stuff and all these soul contracts and future and all. I was like, wow, that's crazy. But I never thought to say, who am I talking to? Who's giving me this information? I was a little slow back then. So basically what they said when I finally said, who is this and why are you giving me all this information? They said that it was time to re-anchor the Akashic energy back on the planet, because the long story is they literally pulled the vibration of the Akasha away from Earth during the dark ages because we misused the information for our own personal gain instead of in service to humanity and such. So they literally pulled the vibration away. So we kind of forgot about it. Hence, people forgot about the Akashic Records and nobody's heard of it for a long time. And so they said, help us re-anchor it. And I said, why me? At that point, I was a mom in the suburbs with like 3 toddlers.
I can imagine you asking, why me? Why have I been chosen to bring
This
the vibration
crazy.
back here? Yes.
Exactly. I'm like, and I'm very busy with 3 babies. Let me just say, you guys are nuts. You're wrong. You have the wrong woman. But that was their answer. You were one of us, which I'm like, what the heck does that mean? So I get all these stories over this time because like, what the heck that means is that I worked in the Akashic Library at one point in service to souls. And so I could hear them.
That's fascinating. I just want to ask, so when you said that they pulled the vibration of the Akashic Records away during sort of, I think it was the Dark Ages, you said, how were they being misused?
Oh, well, people would, if you could, again, it's kind of like if you have easy access into information, which is bigger, like, oh, where does that person hide their gold? I want to, start a war on that country. How do I win that war? What's their weakness? So really for extreme personal gain, even, warring and things like that. So yeah, so it really, in a way, very, very important to kind of stop that easy access into the Akash. But when in the 90s, they said, it's time. We're moving into a new golden age and we're here to create a new earth. And so having access into these libraries for yourself, for your own wisdom, around the plan your soul wrote and the gifts and talents you wanted to bring back and all of this kind of information, they said it's vital to help us transform the world right now.
That's fascinating. So I guess in an Akashic record, as you explained, it has details of all of our, and when you start thinking about some of these things, it's so big, it could make your mind go, oh my goodness, there's so much to this. But so it has every detail of your soul's journey. And is it as detailed as, every decision I make within my incarnation now is contained within that record? How much detail is in a record?
What they say is it's like the detail is there, but rarely accessed because it's not, it's not to relive, rehash, and, wallow in old garbage, right? We are not here to dive back into the mud and the mistakes we've made. We're here to realize, learn, and grow and shift and make a new choice. So, though I would say the detail is there in that level of quantum, energy, I rarely would get anything like that kind of detail. Oh, it's weird what does show up. So you never know. Right?
And I've got so many questions, Lisa. I could probably go for hours, to be quite honest. But so when your soul is created, and you mentioned that was with kind of 25 other souls, and a soul, this is my understanding, souls are eternal. Does a soul ever come to the end of its life, or is each soul eternal? I'm wondering that when you're kind of with your soul cluster, are all of those souls eternal, and what's their relationship if you are created in a soul cluster?
Right. So we are absolutely eternal, and what I hear is that at some point, eventually, we as a soul just choose to kind of return back into oneness. So energy is infinite. It's not going to die. So that energy of your soul, it's almost like just like, again, dropping a drop of water back into the ocean, and it just forgets who it was as a drop of water and just becomes one with the ocean again.
If you come, because you mentioned about your soul sister earlier on, Is it, people who aren't aware of the Akashic Records, if you were to come across one of your soul family, and I guess that the chances of that in the world that we live in of however many billions of people, would you instantly know, do you think, that if I came across someone and said, oh, I just don't know what it is about you, but it's like, is it like a twin flame thing?
Yes. Yeah, it really is often exactly like that. So, again, because we do write a plan, and I will just go ahead, and this is one of my latest books, Your Soul Has a Plan, Awaken to Your Life Purpose Through Your Akashic Records, available on Amazon, right?
I've ordered a copy. I can't wait to read it. I can't wait.
So it really goes into a lot of detail about all these things. But so your soul individuates with this in this little group, this little cluster, and we do run around together. So we do a lot of the same things. And the interesting thing the record keepers say is because when we individuate from source originally, we're such huge souls. We're so infinite, and that we sometimes will split into more parts. And so they say it's not unusual that you might split into 10 or 100 parts. So you don't have one twin flame. You might have 100 or 1,000, right?
Oh, wow.
And the truth is that all of your soul family is part of who you would consider almost like a soul partner or almost like a twin flame, because you've known each other forever. You've done things, you've been married, you've been, father, daughter, brother, sister. As a matter of fact, my husband in this lifetime, we were brother and sister in our last life together. And so with our soul family, we mix it up. We do all of the above. So we know each other again and again and again forever. And so, yes, usually when you meet those people, they feel like, there you are. I mean, that was that was kind of my realization when I met my husband again in this life. It was like, there you are. Where have you been? I was looking for you. And it was kind of funny because, as a matter of fact, I met him at a wedding and I was engaged to be married.
Oh.
So it was kind of wild. I actually got married, divorced, and then I married him. It was kind of an odd timing thing. But it was all about soul growth, which was all interesting too. I mean, I tell these kind of stories often because they're good examples. Like I had a soul contract to marry the other gentleman I married because what I learned from that marriage, we were only married for less than 2 years, was that I cannot save someone, right? He had an addictive personality. He was an alcoholic, and he wouldn't go to AA, went to counseling a little bit. Nothing changed. I realized I can't fix you. I cannot save you. It's not even my job, really. It was a huge epiphany for me as a healer. And so we divorced. It was all fine. It wasn't traumatic or dramatic or, painful. Sorry, we couldn't work this out, but, maybe in another life, who knows? And then there was my husband.
Well, it's do you know what you make? And it kind of made me think when you're talking through this, and even when you said that, look, I've kind of made these decisions. I kind of started doing this kind of work at 35, around your mid-30s. And even sometimes I think to myself, my 20s were absolutely so hard. Like I must have had a dark night of the soul that just went on for about 7 years. And I think to myself, why did I, not wake up to this kind of stuff sooner, even though my granddad was a medium and spiritual? But I understand that I had to go through that to get to where I am now. And I think that, says a lot to people that, it's never too late. If you're in the wrong place or the wrong situation, you don't have to be there. I think it was interesting the way you described the souls as well. To me, it sounded almost like cells or, like frog spawn, the way it sort of multiplies. And it kind of makes sense as well, because when you think about everything on this planet, it's so finely tuned. Why would it not be like a cells multiplying? Of course it would be, because, there's these patterns in everything that we do. So I want to ask about the records then. What is the benefit of, and I'm sure you're going to tell me this, and I'm sure I've got a few ideas, but what is the benefit of understanding and going in your record, and how can that help people?
Mm. It is hugely transformational because in so many ways. So when we learn to open our Akashic records, and of course, I love to teach people how to do this when not that long after the record keepers asked me to help anchor the Akash back and all of this. And I did a lot of readings for years. And then they said, start a school. And, again, because this is the greatest empowerment tool on the planet. So learning to read your own records is profound because you actually get to have that experience of.
Just going to pick up from the question of what's the healing benefit of the Akashic records. So I'm just going to pick up from that point because that'll make it easy for me to edit. So, Lisa, what is the benefit of people understanding their Akashic records?
So many benefits. So let me see if I can be somewhat succinct. Again, because your soul made a whole plan, people often come to me and they say, what's my purpose? Well, the record keepers often will say, your purpose is to complete your soul's plan, which includes contracts with other people to support them, karmic patterns that you want to understand and learn from and grow and actually share that wisdom. There are gifts that you've honed in other lifetimes, amazing talents, because most of us have lived over 500 lifetimes just on Earth alone. So understanding this plan that your soul wrote, and then being able to go into your Akashic records, right? To have a conversation with these record keepers and be able to ask all of these questions that you've had forever about who you are and why did I pick that messed up family and why did I choose, right, to have these problems, right, about your dark night of the soul. Wouldn't you want to really go in and maybe ask more about that and all of these kinds of things? And one of the greatest experiences I find is when you ask about some of these lifetimes that you were on purpose. Maybe in some way, I would go in and say, if I've come to be a healer, show me some lifetimes where I was that, where I did that, where I was good at that, because as a human, I have a ton of self-doubt, right? And so they showed me this beautiful life in ancient Persia, probably about 2000 BC. And I see myself in this big, marble building with students and teaching them energetic healing tools. And I'm like, wow, that's me. I have that ability. I have done that. And not just that lifetime, then they show me other lifetimes. And you can actually energetically start to bring that here into your body to remember it on a cellular level, to step into that energy and to experience that viscerally is profound. It is truly life-changing.
I can imagine it is, and I can't imagine what it must feel like. It must feel like a bit of a homecoming, you've sort of rediscovered or refound yourself in a way. I want to ask, because a lot of people are going to be listening to this who aren't, and we've had other people on who've discussed it, but I want to ask, because this is a solid part of your experience. What is a soul plan, and when do we decide this soul plan, and how does it work?
So every time we come back to Earth, we write this whole plan. So it is not random. I know a lot of light workers feel like they didn't want to be here and somebody shoved them here, or, like we've had these random experiences. How did I end up again? Especially when we have traumatic childhoods or, really, huge childhood challenges. We think, I'm being punished, I must have been an awful person in other lifetimes. But what the record keepers say is that before we come back, we meet with all these other souls. We meet with souls that are from our original soul family. We meet with other souls that we've had experiences with in other lifetimes. Remember, most of you have had at least 400 to 800 lifetimes on Earth alone. Okay? Which is kind of
you can't even bear to think about that, because if you suddenly think, okay, well, the average lifetime could be, well, let's be conservative about this and say 20 years times 500. It's an insane number.
It is. And so we say that, and there are times where we are having more than one experience on a planet at the same time.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Right. So we're very complex, honestly. And so you may have in your particular experience. Okay. So they're saying, your record keepers are saying that you have had about 35 lifetimes as some sort of medium.
Oh.
And I say some sort because there were lifetimes where you were really a pure connected channel for those who have crossed over. There are other lifetimes where you have gone down a darker road. There are lifetimes where you have been kind of an energetic portal, which is kind of interesting.
I must say, before, just on this point, because I'm fascinated by this, before we started, you connected, and I did a meditation where you connected with the record keepers for me. So just to give people a bit of context as to how we're going into this. Carry on, Lisa.
That's right. So when I open someone's records, I do a bit of an energetic ceremony because I want to bring my client into this Akashic field energetically with me. And you even said, wow, I feel so calm.
I felt like when you did it, I felt like I suddenly came into equilibrium and into sync. When you did it, I suddenly felt that I felt very calm, but not just because you told me to sit and breathe. I suddenly felt, it came over me. I did feel something there.
Yeah. So the way the record keepers say it, and I actually wrap a column of Akashic energy around you. So what that also does is it actually moves all the other people out of our space that are in our space and in our head and all of that kind of energy. So often it's quieter. It's like, oh, I'm actually just me right now for a moment, right? That's what that feels like to me. And then, and because the Akasha is part of source energy, it's part of the quantum field, we are really brought into the vibration of pure love. So we're all of a sudden moved into this higher energy of like 500, 600, 700, vibration, which is much higher than humanity, which is more hanging out in the upset and anger, which is, 100 or shame, which is 50, right? So most humans are living in a very low vibration daily, right? Under 200, let's say. And when you go into the records, all of a sudden you're popping up into 500, 600, 700, which feels very different.
So interesting. So what else could you tell me about my records? And I'm guessing you're connecting with the record keepers in order to bring this information through.
Right. So we did the little guided visualization to bring you into the records, and then we just kind of, that's fine. They're there. They'll just hang out. What do they care? They're, infinite, right? Until it felt somehow appropriate that they had something to say to you. And so apparently this was the moment that they decided to share, as we were talking about the fact that most of us have all of these hundreds of lifetimes. And they were just saying, yeah, and tell Jason, he's had like over 35 as a medium. Because again, what I find with most of my clients is they often come because they have some self-doubt about their gifts and their talents. And they wanted you to know that this is not the first time. This is not random, right? You didn't pick your family. You didn't pick your family randomly. You picked your family very much for the gifts and talents that they hold in order to make it easier for you to step into being a medium again in this lifetime. And by picking a family with a grandfather who was a medium, that energy literally in that ancestral lineage connecting in. So it's always fun when our ancestral lineage connects with our past life lineage, right? It gives it all that much more power in a way. Easier to activate those gifts. And so anyway, that was just the message at that point. So when I do readings for people, I usually like them to ask questions because what do you want to know about? What are you curious about? Right. Here we're talking about having all of these hundreds of lifetimes and we wrote this plan. So we wrote contracts with these people that we were going to be born to. And you very much picked your family for some of its gifts and other qualities, but we also want to learn and to grow. So your karmic patterns, they're saying, so the growth is often about, it shows up as a challenge. It might be, again, anything. You might have an abusive family. Maybe you were put up for adoption. Maybe you have a health challenge. Maybe one of your parents had a mental health challenge. Could be anything and or nothing. Many of us are born into loving families. I was blessed. I picked a loving, non-religious family, so I wasn't indoctrinated into any particular religion. It gave me one leg up to, be weird at 3 and at 13 and to have my parents be like, sure, whatever, that's all good. There was no kind of...
It's very interesting because when you say about me being medium 35 times, I feel so like it's a very hard thing, mediumship, for me, because when I'm developing, I feel that it's really hard at times for me, but I feel that it shouldn't be hard because I feel that I know I can do it. And I feel there's this connection with it. And when you said that, it made perfect sense for me. I guess question that I've got is, my life, Lisa, honestly, I do seem to pick challenges. I seem to pick the hardest path of learning all the time. And I'm one of these people where I seem to have to learn lessons the hard way, not the easy way. I have to learn everything the hard way. I guess.
Why?
Yes, please do.
The record keepers are quite chatty. And they say, because, how do I say this? Because you are able to clear some bigger patterns by going deep into the learning, even the pain or the trauma of it, that when you come out of it, you actually are clearing the old energies, the karmic patterns in a very deep way. So not just having the cursory learning, but really going deep into like the pain or the trauma or the struggle or the whatever, all of those aspects. You're completing a lot of old karma for yourself forever, right? It is done and complete. And so we sometimes choose particularly karmic filled lives because that's what we want to do, which could look like. So the one thing I really want to say about karma is that it has nothing to do with punishment. It is all about soul growth, right? So it might be painful. It might feel like a punishment, but truly you as a soul said, I want to learn that. I'm going to pick that abusive family. I want to learn about that. I'm going to have my best friends abandon me when I'm young to wake me up and remember. And those best friends who, for me, left early, abandoned and triggered the hell out of me, right? In both ways, in both to remember that I was a healer when Marcia died at 13 and to go down, a dark rabbit hole of abandonment, right? Those things are all energies that have given me wisdom, I've been able to work and heal and clear big programs and old karmic patterns and unravel and unwrite in the Akasha. So in a sense, that pain or that trauma that I've gone through has expanded out in the world, because when we do this deep healing work for ourselves, it does ripple out and help others.
Fascinating. I wanted to ask as well, one thing that I struggled with a lot throughout my 20s and actually into my 30s was addiction. And it's something that a lot of people struggle with. So I wanted to ask, was there any insights in regards to that from the record keepers?
So they're saying a couple of things. Even though, I know you've had hundreds and hundreds of lives, I also see a lot of the kind of galactic aspects, the not human aspects of you. And part of what they're saying is it's almost like, how do you explain this? All aspects of ourselves from every lifetime we've ever lived is always there in the Akash, right? Everything you've ever been or done in the quantum field is always happening. And so we may have more than one life happening on this planet at the same time. There are galactic aspects of ourselves, which actually have useful gifts. But it's interesting that your galactic aspect seems to be the part that was more in, I'm going to say defiance is how it kind of comes through, more in rebellion to being embodied as a human again with this kind of path. And it feels like that aspect or those aspects of you had more of the escapist gene. So that's the I don't really want to be here. What the hell was I thinking? Part of that. And that kind of comes together with the sensitivity of who you are as a sensitive and as an empath and as a medium. All those pieces kind of make it hard to be embodied until you learn how to be the sovereign of your body, to own your physical body and your energy field, to even, so I even see it when we open the records, and that kind of brought those boundaries in around you in the Akash, really for you learning to have fabulous boundaries every moment of the day or night is so important, because that allows you to feel safe, to be a clearer channel, to not have all of the other pain, story, or trauma going on. It feels like you get nagged a lot by souls who have crossed over to help them in some way. And that feels stressful or exhausting, or does that make sense?
Yeah. Do you know what? I'm still I would say I'm still in the early stages of my mediumship development, and I'm starting to just get over that bit of the lack of self-confidence. But I am so intuitive. Even as a child, I always thought I was smarter than the teachers. I would sit there with this inner knowing, and I've always felt like, even as, and it's funny because I was even using this kind of language when I was, I remember distinctly when I was about 6, I used to say, I'm an old soul. I'm an old soul. And I used to feel that I've got this level of wisdom. Don't get me wrong. I've got this level of wisdom, but copious amounts of the time, Lisa, I lack common sense. You know, I still seem to have to take the hard path a lot, but it's very interesting you say that. But I know I've suddenly recently started becoming so aware of energies around me, and I understand what you're saying about boundaries. I have to have boundaries. And when I was living a life before living the life I'm living now with these clear boundaries, it was just chaotic. And that's because I'm a sensitive person, and I was trying to, I guess, find things to make me feel whole. But really the only thing that's going to make me whole is this, you know, very strict life of boundaries and control, and that's what I kind of need. So it makes total sense what you're saying.
Yeah. I mean, because if you have all these other energies yanking at you 24/7, and we don't even notice it or know it, because it's always been that way. So it's almost until we can start to create a good boundary and be like, "Whew, wow, that's quieter in here." If I can shut all the noise out and all the chaos out. And often addiction is based on our trying to escape the noise, the sensitivity, other people talking in our heads, other people trying to get us to do things, embodied and unembodied. So it's even harder for a medium, because you've got unembodied souls who are also talking to you, whether you hear them or not yet. They're still there chattering away. So
you're right. It is like numbing the sensitivity. And now I've realized that the only way of living is to embrace it, but manage it.
Right.
I want to ask you, so your books, tell us about your books, because they sound fascinating. So Your Soul Has a Plan, Awaken to Your Life Purpose through the Akashic Records. Tell us about this book and what people can expect from it.
So this is really the great, I'm going to say, the best place to start, because understanding that you as an infinite soul made this whole plan, right? None of us are victims. We didn't end up in the wrong planet with the wrong family, with the wrong body. We planned it for some reason. So we get to understand about all of that in this book. So I really talk about the fact that you did write a whole manual, and you did write all these soul contracts, good, bad, and indifferent. We have contracts to support each other. We have karma contracts with kind of karma or attached, in a sense. These, I want to learn this, and this person has volunteered to help me learn it. So those are karmic relationships, right? Again, the gifts, the talents that we want to eventually come to. But I say that most of us, at least the first 30 years of our lives, is very much just about kind of sorting through all of that, and maybe getting to a point where we can start to think about being a little bit spiritual, or a little bit more than past survival. So Your Soul Has a Plan. It's even kind of a nice workbook. There are questions in there, to help people to think about, how does this relate to me? How am I feeling about it? There are healing prayers in this book also to help, that I channeled from the Akashic Records, to help clear all of that. And so the book, From Questioning to Knowing, with 73 prayers to transform your life. It's a lovely foreword by Jack Canfield, who did all the Chicken Soup for the Soul books. Lovely gentleman. I channeled 73 healing prayers from the record keepers, and which really, everything from, there's a prayer for self-trust, there's a prayer for peace, there's 73, one to upgrade the DNA in your body, one to release fear of the unknown, one to clear entities and energy patterns. I mean, seriously. Oh, you can't see. Well,
I love that. I love the fact that there's all these prayers. I think that's such a beautiful book.
Yeah. So people use that. It's a great one. I've had people say, I keep it with me. I pick it up every day and I just even open it up and read, whatever it happens to be that I just open to, which is interesting. So I just open to the prayer to balance feminine and masculine energy. And the reason I find that particularly interesting is because it's a very big soul contract on the planet. Many billions of people on Earth right now have come to help with this soul contract. One of the things the record keepers say is that we cannot create a new Earth until we bring ourselves into balance. That's masculine, feminine. It's all around, kind of the imbalance of power, of money, of everything, really. but a lot of it really stems, the very core piece is about really the toxic masculine and the imbalanced, of course, feminine. So bringing him back into divine feminine and sacred masculine energies where we're here to work with each other, to support each other. And so huge and important soul contract that many people have. And we sometimes have that in our families or in our personal relationships or in our work relationships. So I'll see it come up again and again in a lot of different ways with people. So that's From Questioning to Knowing, 73 Prayers to Transform Your Life. And then I wrote Akasha, I did last year. My background.
Oh, I can see it.
Yeah.
So a common sentence, Akasha.
Right. So, and the fun thing is this Common Sentience is a series of books. And so there are 15 books in this series. So I wrote Akasha, but there's also one on angels, on portals. A fellow Brit Freddie Silva wrote Portals, about the sacred standing stones and all these sacred sites. There's one on shamanism, on sound healing, on animals, right? Animal guides and anyway, there's one on mediumship. Oh, you should pick up the brand new one from Suzanne Giesemann on mediumship. Check out Common Sentience at sacredstories.com. Yeah, Suzanne Giesemann is a fabulous medium. So since that's
she is, yeah, she's very good.
Hers just came out, and so I got to write the book Akasha, all about the Akashic Records, and so that, and then my very first book, which is The Infinite Wisdom of the Akashic Records. One of this came out in 2015, and this is my 5-step wisdom prayer system. And will actually teach you how to access your own Akashic records.
Honestly, you've been very busy, Lisa, in recent years. I think it's an achievement to even write one book. And, I want to ask, is it easy for people with the people that you sort of coach to kind of visit and, get into their own records? How, what's the biggest challenge to doing it? Is it, I don't want to use the word easy, but
yeah.
What does it look like, people trying to get into it? Right. Is it like a big bank vault that, we're sort of there trying to figure out the code to get in?
Here's the very cool thing, though. The record keepers gave me a 5-step wisdom prayer system. So it is a very simple system. I have 5. Well, there is 5 steps, basically. So the record keepers have given me these vibrational keys in the form of a sacred prayer. So what that means is I teach these workshops live online. And of course, you can read the book and do it that way too. Live online, of course, I'm holding that field of energy for you. So that gets created and is helpful. But through the books, I've had lots of people read my how-to from the Infinite Wisdom of the Akashic Records and totally get it, right? Mm-hmm. So it's a very clear system. I give you exercises. I teach it as like 14-hour workshop when I do it online because it's a deep process. I teach all sorts of tools. I teach a very clear boundary creating tool, which we call the Rainbow Shield. We use some of the prayers to clear our field, move other people out, move any entities and energy patterns out, to step more fully into the truth of our knowingness as we use the vibrational key to unlock that door and open into your Akashic Records. And it's beautiful. So I would say that honestly, probably about 80% of the people who do my workshops get it pretty clearly, pretty well, pretty quickly. And 20% may struggle. If they keep at it, they may get it. Some may have so much self-doubt. And what I find is that sometimes the best place to start is with a book and a reading, where you come to me and I actually can read your records for you and do a ton of quantum healing for you before you even start to open your records, before you kind of go down that road. So for some people, it's a little bit more of a path. And, as you've experienced in becoming a medium, even though we have the gifts, even though we have the ability, we have to work on some of clearing our own old energies and patterns and fears and doubts and all of that as we're learning and growing and on these spiritual paths.
Lisa, it's been the most fascinating episode. And if you do want to find out more about Lisa, her books, the work that she does, then just go to the show notes and all the details will be there. Lisa, all that leaves me to say is, actually, do you know what I'm going to ask you to do, actually? I do sometimes ask guests to do this. Would you like to leave us on a final thought or a pearl of wisdom to close the episode today?
Absolutely. So, the Akashic Record Keepers are saying it is happening. No matter what the world looks like to you right now, we are awakening. The vibration of the planet is raising. You will create a new Earth. Stick with it.
Well, there we go. That was the absolutely lovely Lisa Barnett. And do you know what? I could have delved into my soul journey in a lot more detail. I had to restrain myself there. It was a beautiful conversation. If you want to find out more about Lisa, just go to the show description. I do encourage you to go over to my YouTube channel because I'm starting to give that a lot of love and attention because I want to help you with your mediumship if that's indeed what you're interested in. But even if you're not interested in your mediumship, there's so many things Sitting in the Power can help you do. So you will find very soon there's going to be some videos up there, some things to help you try and get into your power. And most importantly, I just want to say thank you so much for stopping by. It's lovely to have you here. Lots of love.